Two carriers, one message: what the US naval buildup near Iran signals and what it doesn't. The United States Navy does not move aircraft carrier strike groups quietly. Each carrier brings with it a formation of cruisers, destroyers, submarines, and support vessels, a mobile airfield capable of projecting air power across hundreds of miles, escorted by some of the most capable anti-missile and anti-submarine systems afloat. When Washington sends one carrier toward a region, it is making a statement. When it sends two, it is making a different kind of statement, one directed not just at adversaries, but at negotiating partners, allies, and domestic audiences simultaneously. A second U.S. aircraft carrier strike group is now moving toward the Middle East to join the USS Abraham Lincoln, already operating in the region. The deployment comes as diplomatic talks over Iran's nuclear program continue without a clear breakthrough, and as President Trump has stated publicly that a change of leadership in Tehran would be the best thing that could happen if negotiations fail to produce agreements on nuclear limits and missile programs. The combination of expanded naval presence and maximalist public rhetoric raises a question that analysts, diplomats, and market participants are all trying to answer. Is this coordinated pressure designed to accelerate a deal, or is it preparation for something else entirely? A single carrier strike group provides substantial capability, roughly 70 combat aircraft, layered air defense, and the ability to conduct sustained strike operations across a wide area. Two strike groups operating in coordination represent a qualitatively different proposition. The second carrier doubles available strike aircraft and dramatically expands the sustained sortie rate. It also provides redundancy. If one carrier is forced to withdraw, the second maintains the mission. And it creates targeting complexity for any adversary. Two separate high-value targets moving independently require significantly more intelligence and coordination to monitor than one. In the context of Iran, two carriers communicate capability for simultaneous operations across multiple target sets, nuclear-related facilities, air defense networks, missile storage sites, and naval assets spread across a large geographic area. Military planners on all sides will read that capability signal clearly, whether or not it is ever exercised. The Abraham Lincoln's presence was already registered in Tehran's threat calculus. The addition of a second strike group shifts that calculus, not by making conflict inevitable, but by changing the cost-benefit analysis Iranian leadership must perform when deciding how to respond to diplomatic pressure. Trump's public comment that a change of Iranian leadership would be the best thing that could happen if talks fail is analytically significant beyond its surface provocation. Formal diplomatic positions are carefully constructed to preserve flexibility. Public statements by heads of state operate differently. They communicate resolve to domestic audiences and set expectations harder to walk back. Trump's statement falls into what analysts call maximalist signaling, communicating a preferred outcome so far beyond the formal negotiating position that it functions as a boundary marker rather than an offer. It tells Tehran that the American president's personal preference is not a modified nuclear agreement, but a fundamental change in Iranian governance. The risk is that it can be read as bad faith, evidence that the stated goal of negotiation is not genuine. Iranian leadership has domestic political constraints of its own. Being seen to make concessions to an American president who has publicly called for regime change is politically costly in Tehran in ways that constrain what Iranian negotiators can agree to, regardless of the underlying substance. Military presence near a negotiating adversary can accelerate agreement by making the cost of failure concrete and visible. Iranian leadership can point to carrier strike groups in the Gulf and tell domestic audiences, this is what the alternative looks like. That creates pressure to reach a deal and can provide cover for concessions, framed as pragmatic responses to overwhelming force rather than voluntary capitulation. But military presence can also harden positions. If Iranian leadership concludes that the naval buildup reflects an American intention to use force regardless of negotiating outcomes, the incentive to make concessions decreases. This is the fundamental tension in coercive diplomacy. The same threat that creates pressure to negotiate can, if read as unconditional, eliminate the incentive to do so. The critical variable is whether Tehran believes that successful negotiation will actually result in the military pressure being relieved. If a deal produces sanctions, relief, and withdrawal of the naval buildup, that creates genuine incentive. If Tehran believes no deal will satisfy Washington, that the carriers are there regardless, then the military posture becomes background noise rather than leverage. Aircraft carriers are the most visible symbols of American military power precisely because they are designed to be seen. They operate on the surface, they generate significant electronic signatures, and their movements are tracked by commercial satellite services and reported in open-source media. This visibility is not a vulnerability, it is a feature. The carrier's deterrent and coercive value depends entirely on the adversary knowing it is there. In negotiation dynamics, this visibility translates into a constant physical reminder of the stakes. Iranian officials conducting talks in Geneva or through intermediary channels are doing so with full awareness that two American carrier strike groups are positioned within striking range of their country. That awareness does not determine how they negotiate, but it shapes the context in which every decision is made. For American negotiators, the carriers provide what diplomats call a credible backstop, evidence that the option of force exists and has been positioned for use. This strengthens negotiating leverage in theory, because an adversary that believes threats are credible takes them more seriously. The challenge is maintaining that credibility without triggering the outcome the threat is designed to prevent. For Gulf states hosting American forces and routing their energy exports through the Strait of Hormuz, the dual carrier deployment is both reassurance and source of anxiety. Reassurance because American commitment to regional security is visibly demonstrated. Anxiety because an escalatory incident, whether deliberate or accidental, in a corridor carrying 21 million barrels of oil daily, would have consequences for their economies regardless of how it started. Naval strength has never been just hardware. It is geometry, the ability to be present at the place and time that matters. Two carriers near Iran during active negotiations means Washington has chosen to make its military geometry visible at the precise moment when diplomatic geometry is being negotiated. Whether that choice accelerates agreement or complicates it depends on decisions being made in Tehran, Washington, and the intermediary capitals between them. The carriers themselves are not the answer to that question. They are the context in which the answer will be found.